Welcome to the Northern Business Podcast. Each week we talk to people active in business and the economy about the big issues driving growth in the north of England. We're sponsored by Vertu Motors, one of the UK's largest motor retailers. You can check out its website at vertumotors.com. I'm Graham Robb, owner of Recognition PR, and we help scores of businesses promote their products and services. Some are featured on this podcast. Don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. In the studio today, we have Alistair Gregg, who's the director of North Star Ventures. We'll be talking money and how you can get money into businesses in the north of England. And down the line is Matthew Stevens. He's a property developer by trade with 25 years experience in the market, but he's also president of the Barnsley and Rotherham Chamber of Commerce. And later, my colleague Josh will be speaking to Joshi Jin, co-founder of Wowzerbox, which is a very interesting culinary business based in Newcastle. Well, first of all, Matthew, welcome to the programme from Barnsley. We're proper taking it up today. Your business is involved in property, but Barnsley seems to be a town that's on the up. And it's always great to talk about towns on the up. Why do you think Barnsley's on the up?
Yeah, good afternoon, Graham. And actually, I'm in Rotherham. I'm at our head office, the Chamber's head office in Rotherham, actually. But we are the Barnsley and Rotherham Chamber. I'm proud to be the president. I'm in my second year of a 2-year presidency. So most of my working life has been spent actually in property in Barnsley. So in answer to that question, yeah, Barnsley is very much on the up. Barnsley has invested significantly in its town centre. It's had some huge uptake, particularly in the growth of the town centre and the surrounding areas as well. And I think a lot of that has been down to the council putting their faith in the town and building the new Glassworks development, which has transformed the town centre. But actually, is actually the catalyst. Yeah, that's just one part of the jigsaw. Many moons ago, we developed a large private sector development at Gateway Plaza, which was the first part of the private sector getting involved in Barnsley.
Now, Barnsley, like many northern towns, obviously has had its fair share of problems and knocks over the last 30 years. And there has been this initiative, the Towns Fund initiative, over the last 5 or 6 years. It was maybe interrupted a little bit by COVID, but I've seen towns around the north getting receipt of Towns Fund money. How is that managed and how is it delivering change in a town like Barnsley?
Yeah, so take Barnsley, for example. I'm privileged actually to be chair of the Goldthorpe Towns Fund board as part of my role as chamber president. I was invited to chair that board about 3 years ago, and that's been successful in being awarded £23.1 million from government from that Towns Fund. So, I'm seeing how it's been spent. It's got some real key projects, some property regen stuff. There's some stuff around culture. We've got some stuff around housing in particular, because one of the major issues is around housing, particularly the quality of some of the housing stock, which is very poor. And we've got some really exciting things happening in Goldthorpe, which is, much needed investment. These former mining communities, which have been so, decimated really over the years, are really now starting to, show signs of recovery, thanks to things like the Towns Fund.
Now, this podcast comes out of the northeast, Darlington, which and Darlington is a town, not a city, and it's had a big injection of capital via a governmental campus coming into town, and it's also won various bits and pieces. And the other towns in the northeast Teesside area have won Towns Fund, like Redcar. But quite often, people don't live in the towns much more, and getting people to live near to shops and getting towns developed so that they're not just nice places to pop in and visit a charity shop, but they're nice places to inhabit and do more than just visit for a couple of hours at the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, much of that is around housing growth. And, Barnsley as a council and Rotherham, both the councils which I'm sort of working with very closely as president of the chamber, have got some really ambitious housing growth targets. And you're right, it is about getting people to live in these towns. Now, if you take somewhere like Goldthorpe, significant variances in the market there. You've got streets of houses that are boarded up in Goldthorpe, some of which are going to be repurposed as part of the Towns Fund and brought back into use. But what's really interesting is, and some of them are our members at the chamber, we've had a real huge uplift in the amount of developers wanting to build in places like Goldthorpe. I'm not saying that's directly as a result of the Towns Fund, but certainly the Towns Fund monies which are improving the town centre environment and some of the educational, cultural things around it, is having a knock-on effect. And there is that demand, for housing in areas such as Goldthorpe.
And you are seeing towns now take ownership of the issue, particularly through independent traders. For at least a decade, many of our town centres, as opposed to city centres, have been subject to big decisions by corporate holdings of large retail chains deciding that they're exiting the market because retail's changing. And you are seeing, are you not, independent stores, people taking a punt on selling different things and creating more lifestyle shopping experience. Now, is that happening in South Yorkshire as it is happening in parts of the North East and North West?
What's really interesting is if you take, we represent 1,100 members in both Barnsley and Rotherham and the wider South Yorkshire. And if you take Rotherham as an example, Rotherham is in a very different place to Barnsley in terms of that retail. So Rotherham, in one way, has got probably certainly one of the largest of the Metro Centre is one as well, one of the largest shopping centres in the UK, literally from where I'm sitting now, 2 minutes drive away, as well as Parkgate, which is a significant town centre. Out of town shopping centre. So the town centre has suffered.
You're talking about the Meadowhall centre, are you?
Well, Meadowhall, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Rotherham's got Meadowhall and Parkgate, so it's got a double whammy of impact on the town centre. Barnsley is different because Barnsley has always had a really strong market. There's been a market in Barnsley for, best part of, since the 12th century, I think it was back in the day. So it's always had that market traders. Now, what's interesting about Barnsley is not only has footfall increased over 30% pre-COVID since the town centre transformation, but what's really interesting for me is the amount of independents. So we're below the national average in terms of vacancies, which is a positive, and we are way, way ahead of the national average in terms of independents. So there's a lot of independent shops in Barnsley. And you're right, and some of the larger brands have moved. Marks & Spencer's moved out, but again, they've gone to the periphery. But, the idea now is about repurposing. So Barnsley Council themselves, have recently acquired the Alhambra Centre. They're looking at repurposing that. There's going to be a healthcare function there. They brought healthcare to the high street in Barnsley, and the Community Diagnostic Centre in the centre of the Glassworks has been an enormous success, which I think other towns are looking to replicate across the country.
Yeah, getting these services right is very important. The things that you have to come into town for, a health check, for example, and also the public realm, the way in which the pavements are laid out, the availability to lock your bike up somewhere safe if you want to cycle in, ability to park your car somewhere cheap and safe. These are very important elements, as well as proper pedestrian facilities.
Exactly, and again, within Barnsley, they're looking at there's going to be an active travel hub. Rotherham are doing something similar in town. They're trying to promote bike routes, bike usage, and that type of thing in the town centre. So
now let's talk about the Chamber. Your Chamber of Commerce has 1,100 active members, and those active members have these are good data. 100,000 people are employed by the members of your. It's a relatively small area by population, and that's a very good membership role of members of the Chamber of Commerce. What are the big issues they face at the moment? Privately owned businesses who are members of the Chamber of Commerce in South Yorkshire. What would you say?
Well, I think if you'd asked me the question, obviously, with the last couple of years, clearly there's been issues. Obviously coming out of COVID, there's clearly issues around. Export. Some of our businesses suffered, in terms of export. Our own export business has suffered here, has been a challenge. Clearly, the cost of living is a massive thing. One of the real big opportunities that we see, certainly as a chamber and with the anchor institutions around us, is buying local. It's something that a lot of businesses are saying, look, how can we get to work with the council? One of the challenges that they're saying, we're based in Rotherham. How do we get to work with the council? And we want to try and help that process. So I think one of the challenges has clearly been, things around export, around skills, recruitment. Those seem to have eased. Some of our members 2 years ago were really struggling to recruit. We had members in Barnsley who had hundreds and hundreds of vacancies that they couldn't fill. That does seem to have settled down now. The labour market has settled down. But there's clearly, had a meeting this afternoon around skills, construction skills. Still a lack of people getting into construction is a concern. But again, as a chamber, we work really closely with the colleges, see Barnsley College, Rotherham College. I'm proud to be a governor at Northern College, who are doing some really good things as well, which is an adult college, which is based in Barnsley as well.
Matthew, what do you think is the most common form of funding that your members will take? Will they go traditional route, banking? Will they go a route of informal finance, family loans? Or are you seeing people actually scaling up by getting selling part of the shares to venture capitalists and that kind of route. What are you seeing as active in the market now?
We've got a real diverse membership, and we've had companies that have had sort of MBOs. They've had investment from outside, outside the region. Yes, it varies really. I mean, I do sense that the funding market is easing a little bit, but it has been challenging. Particularly over the last 12 months. And obviously uncertainty around things like interest rates hasn't helped. So I do find that the high street banks, we used to have a number of members of the Chamber who are high street banks, and we have a couple now, but a lot of them, they're just not, I don't see them as open for business really, which is a criticism really.
Well, look, it sounds from everything you're saying a really positive narrative about what's happening in South Yorkshire, in Rotherham and Barnsley. And I think it's fantastic to hear it. And can I just say the very best to you, and congratulations on your own award last year, where you were given one of the awards. I've got it here somewhere. We'll flash it on our screen. And I just remind myself. It was Property Developer of the
Personality of the Year. It was.
Well done.
Thank you very much. I was honoured, and I think that it was 20 years of hard work really to get that, and potentially not that much recognition. But I think it was really good to be honoured by my peers. I was very privileged, but thank you.
Well, we're pleased to do it, and do come on one of our podcasts again. It was great to hear the news from South Yorkshire. Thanks, Matthew.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Well, let's turn now to Alistair Gregg from North Star. Now, North Star, your business is all about funding. What did you have to think of what he was just saying about the different ways in which those kind of businesses were funded?
Well, Graham, I think it's fascinating. We've heard all about, building town centres, I suppose levelling up, a term we haven't used, but very much, how do we drive prosperity in the north? I'm someone from Cambridge originally who's been living in the northeast for 17, 18 years. And I think, complementing all you've discussed in terms of new retail, independent business, new housing, etc., culture, venture capital, I think, is a sort of key ingredient, a key sort of piece of the jigsaw puzzle that allows highly scalable businesses to get the funding they need to really grow, scale, and become the kind of high quality, high impact employers of the future. And that's what I think, the North needs in spades now.
I want to talk about some of the solutions you've got to that in a minute, but let's just look at cast our minds a little back, because you've released your environmental, social and governance report. It sounds a bit trendy, that I've got to say, Alistair, but it's showing that you have made a significant commitment of capital to female funded and female led businesses. In fact, according to my data here, it's more than 7 times the industry average. And you've done it here in the northeast of England. Was that a big task?
It was a big task. I mean, and it's an ongoing task. And I think, just to be utterly clear, management is key to all of the businesses we back. It's key to getting the businesses to grow and scale. And we're always looking for a diverse team, to be honest, and that's the ultimate objective. But there is no doubt about it. The pendulum has swung, too far in the past. There's loads of literature on the technology industry. It is terribly male dominated, and I think it's everybody understands now that a diverse team, both age, ethnicity, gender, having a good diverse team kind of helps with results, helps to bring more experience, etc., around the table. So we've been actively and proactively looking to bring in more diversity to our teams. But our ultimate objective is not all men, it's not all women. It's a good diverse team. But you have to sort of push the pendulum a bit to get to that point.
Well, let's talk about a good quality investment that you've made by way of example of the kind of thing that North Star Ventures will get involved with, and that is advanced electric machines. You raised around 23 million to help that company.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is really interesting, actually, and I think highlights a number of aspects of opportunity in the northeast. I mean, one of my bugbears is that we hear a lot about levelling up. We hear a lot about the UK as a science superpower, etc. And yet we sit here in the northeast with our universities, some of them, highly regarded research-intensive Russell Group universities, but with very, very, very limited access to capital to commercialise the great academic base that they have. You look at Oxford, Cambridge, any university in the Golden Triangle. Oxford, for example, has 800 million available to commercialise its academic base. We have close to zero in the Northeast, to be brutally frank. So AEM is a very interesting example of a company that spun out of the engineering department of Newcastle University about 5 years ago. Brand new concept then, a next generation electric motor which doesn't use rare earth metals. So really strategic for the UK. In quite a short period of time, it's gone from pure concept through various rounds of funding, including quite a bit from ourselves, to what's now a very substantial round for the Northeast, £23 million round that was closed a few months ago, and that is to expand their factory in Sunderland, diversify their product base, and they're sitting on significant orders from a number of global brands, mostly in electric trucks to start with, but also looking at electric vehicles. But a really interesting example of the kind of innovative technology that can come out of this region, a lot of it based on universities, and frankly where that is, there's a whole lot more to come, and I suppose my big plea is we need to do more to bring more capital to the region to take advantage of these kinds of opportunities.
Now you're doing this by launching 3 separate initiatives in the year 2024. Let's go through them all. First is the Northeast Venture Fund. Have I got that right?
Venture North.
Yeah. So Venture North is a collaboration with universities. The concept behind that being?
Yeah, so we're working very closely in partnership with the Northeast universities, led by Durham and Newcastle. And this is to bring together their first real commercialisation fund. So we're trying to pull together a capital of about £75 million, which will be, their first significant sum that can drive future AEM type opportunities.
Okay. I know there are some fantastic stories that have come out of universities. Chromec in Sedgefield at Netpark came out of Durham University, and my own firm is working with Animersion, which came out of Teesside University. That's a fund that's on its legs, it's starting to walk, is it?
We're in the process of raising. We're hoping to get to a first close during 2024.
Right. But, so watch this space.
But we've got commitments from the universities themselves who have committed cash to the fund. We've got about 25 to 30 million committed so far, and we're trying to get to a first close of 50 million sometime this year.
Okay, well that's great. And the money for that will come from the city or institutional investors. Now there are opportunities for private investors to invest in other funds that you want to deploy in the Northeast. Let's talk about the first one, the EIS one. What's that you're launching?
So, our background has always been in raising money from institutional investors, and that's what we've been deploying for the past 15, 16, 17 years, and mostly sort of quasi-government sources of funding. We've just, at the same time, we've often co-invested with angels when we've done specific deals. So quite often with our own funds, we brought in specific angels in alongside us in particular deals. We're now going the next stage in the sort of high net worth market, if you like, by bringing together our first EIS fund. So EIS, as you may know, is basically allows very significant tax advantages to encourage high net worths to get involved in the early stage equity market.
This is the Enterprise Investment Scheme.
Correct.
Let's tick off what the advantages are. If there's someone watching who has some disposable cash, and if interest rates are going down, they may have more.
Yeah. Well, perhaps the key advantage is you get a very substantial income tax relief by investing in an EIS fund. So a 30% income tax relief. If it's a SCIS, which we'll come on to talk about, it's actually a 50% relief. So
those reliefs happen at the point of investment as well.
They happen at the point of investment, and there are also very significant other advantages in terms of the capital gains tax free, in terms of any gains you make through the fund. If things go wrong, there are various loss reliefs that come into play. There are also advantages in terms of inheritance, etc. So very significant tax advantages.
I think we shouldn't underestimate the capital gains tax allowances, because capital gains tax itself, the threshold is falling like a stone, isn't it? People who don't expect to pay capital gains tax are now getting caught. And of course, if there is a Labour government, it hasn't been widely advertised, but there is a lot of talk about capital gains tax going up.
Correct. Yeah. So very significant tax advantages. But of course, it's not about the tax advantages; it's about the investment opportunity. Our first fund, which we're actually launching this month, is an EIS growth fund. So it's all about investing capital in the best regional scale-up companies. So companies in the clean tech and healthy aging sectors that are well into their commercialization journeys. They've got established management teams. They've got a clear product market fit. They're scaling well. They've got revenue, and they just need the next bit of capital to really scale and get to that exit point that brings a return.
Let's remind ourselves what scale up is. It's growing by 20% a year or more. It's growing that state for 3 years or more, and it's employing more than 10 people. So that is scale up. So they're significant companies to watch, aren't they?
They are. They're the companies. I mean, we're trying to create, companies the scale of Sage, if you like, and we would like to see, another 10 companies the sort of size and scale of Sage in region.
Okay, so you're aiming to create this fund, and you said 75 million is your target for the venture fund. What about for the EIS?
Well, with the EIS funds, you raise it on an annual basis. So we're raising somewhere between 3 and 5 million in this first fund, which we'll be raising between now and the end of March. And then we'll have that fund ready and closed by the start of the next tax year. And we'll be investing that fund during the course of the 12 months of the next tax year.
Now, the final fund it's slightly more risky, but maybe it's important as well, and that's the SEIS startup seed funding, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we won't have further scale-up opportunities if we don't continue to invest in the startup ecosystem. We've been involved in this region for many years. We've got good relationship with the universities. We believe, as we've already discussed, there's a fundamental opportunity, particularly through the universities, but also through some of the institutes that are in region as well. And so, the idea of the SEIS fund is about investing in very, very early stage businesses, first institutional money in order to take advantage of what is often a very significant growth in valuation point from that start point to the kind of stage we talked about with AM, where they get to the point where they can raise 23 million pounds from national stroke international investors. This SEIS one is a couple of stages before that to get the companies to that point.
Before I round up on this from the company's point of view, let's just look at it from the investor's point of view.
Yeah.
If an investor is going to commit, your minimum investment is 25,000.
Correct. In the EIS
fund. Say £75,000 or more in one of these funds.
Yeah.
The advantage of doing it through a fund rather than just talking to an entrepreneur and investing yourself, what's the significant advantage?
I think people underestimate the difficulty of starting and scaling and crucially exiting one of these companies. And the important thing about investing with somebody like ourselves is we will be sitting on the board. We've got quite a lot of experience in going through the journey. We provide very significant support to the management team as they add talent to the business, as they find their markets, as they grow the company, and crucially, we're sort of alongside them, always reminding them about the journey and the fact that we do have to achieve an exit, of course, which they want to do, but it's very easy to put off the exit to a future time.
And you've got some mentorship as well. They're getting something from it by getting you on the board as well. It's not just nagging them. Correct. Now, looking at it from the point of view of the company, what kind of investments will you, if you just look at the EIS one, start the scale-up one, what kind of requests and applications will you be looking at and scrutinising? What numbers?
Well, I mean, we are going to. This is our first foray into the EIS market. We've deliberately gone for a relatively low risk initial fund. So we already have quite a significant portfolio of businesses that have got to an interesting stage, like an AEM. So we're going to be restricting this cash towards companies that we know very well. Either they're in our portfolio or we know them through partner venture capital firms.
Right. Okay.
So you know, there's not going to be much of an application process from the entrepreneur's perspective. We kind of, you know, have a pipeline of opportunities
and
already,
what about
and
the
we
seed one, the startup ones, is that different?
that's very different, and we're, you know, we spend a lot of time via the team building our pipeline of early stage opportunities, both in the university context, but also outside of it in the broader sort of tech ecosystem. At any one point in time, you know, we're sitting on a pipeline of several hundred opportunities, you know, in the Northeast. Obviously, we're not, you know, actively involved in all of those, but we're keeping an eye on them. We're looking at the ones that develop, and at any point in time, you know, we've got a sort of a hit list of, you know, 10 to 15 companies that we're sort of getting seriously involved in.
And what kind of lumps will you be giving them, these smaller ones, the startups?
So you know, initially at the very early stage, it's normally a few £100,000 in a sort of pre-seed or seed round, just to and really what you're doing then is almost placing a series of bets. You know, you know that the failure rate in that very early stages will be quite high. These are high risk opportunities, and the idea with these funds is you sort of place your bets, if you like, to start with, work with the companies and try and double down on the ones that are meeting their milestones, successfully commercializing, you know, and demonstrating real progress.
Okay. Well, just before we go back to Matthew. Are you working with funds like this in South Yorkshire? Is this because he's talking about money specifically for the Northeast region here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally not, but I am aware of funds that are working closely with the unis. We've got, obviously, one of the great things that Rotherham's got is the Advanced Manufacturing Park, you know, the MRC, which is partly, you know, the unis, Sheffield Uni are a lead on that. But yeah, you're right, there are certain things like that in South Yorkshire, certainly.
Well, look, Matthew, thanks for joining us. Thank you again, and thanks, Alistair. And I hope this fund goes off well. I'm sure it will. There's a lot of interesting things to invest in. In fact, our next piece is the kind of thing you might want to invest in. It's a new business to do with the culinary expertise of the Chinese market. And let's talk to my colleague Josh, who's been speaking with Joshi Jin, co-founder of Wowzerbox.
Thanks, Graham. This week, I've come to Wowzerbox's factory in Team Valley. It's a really exciting startup that's bringing authentic Chinese cuisine to British kitchens. It's just hit 150,000 meals delivered. So we're going to have a little chat with Joshi Jin, the founder, about what this fantastic business is doing.
So Wowzerbox has shipped out 150,000 meals in just over a year's time since we launched in 2022, and we achieved 500,000 sales. It's unprecedented growth from our part, definitely. The Chinese food is the most popular choice when it comes to dining. However, quality Chinese food is not accessible to everybody. Now, with our methods, we can cover the whole mainland of the UK to enable customers wherever you are, you can have a decent restaurant quality Chinese meal in as little as 10 minutes. So I think people are gonna love that. So of that 150,000 meals, we know over half of it is from repeating customers, and we have new customers on board every week. This shows the great growth potential in the future. So 150,000 meals is just the tips of the iceberg. We are aimed to be the most popular Chinese food brand in the UK.
That was great. Josh will definitely be tasting some of that. Some of the staff at Recognition have already ordered from Wowzer. It's a great entrepreneurial activity, and well done, Joshi, for that. Now, if you want to join us as a guest on the Northern Business Podcast, feel free to get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks to our podcast producer, Harry Sinclair, and technical operator, Robin Campbell. Join us next time for the Northern Business Podcast. Never miss an episode. Like, rate, and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.